Top Biden administration officials, along with lawmakers, business leaders, academics as well, gathered last week to discuss 6G technology. Joining us now to discuss these advancements and the potential rollout, and Neuberger, Deputy National Security Advisor for Cyber Emerging Technology. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. So, and this major event hosted by the National Science Foundation, talking about laying the groundwork for 6G here. How does the US plan on leading and laying this groundwork for 6G?
President Biden is very focused on ensuring American leadership in technologies, particularly those that are core to our economy, our national security, and to ensuring every American has the access they need to compete for jobs and to be successful. So the goal of this workshop, as you noted, bringing together universities, private sector, and policymakers, was to talk about how we get the technology and policy right to ensure that we can lead in this space. And I'm happy to give some examples on why this is such a core technology.
And we certainly will get to that. But a lot of people are wondering, a lot of people are still getting to grips with 5G. So who at the moment then is leading in 6G? Is it the US or China?
So 6G, fundamentally, we are at the research and technology phase where we're thinking about how artificial intelligence, for example, can help us bring together data to build more power-efficient sensors and components. We're thinking about how spectrum and standards decisions and how we engage in those from a policy perspective can, to your point, ensure American leadership. So the jury is still out on how 6G will look. We know it'll be that combination of AI, sensors, and innovations in both spectrum and standards, and that's why it's key to engage now, bring together the core stakeholders to ensure that America can lead in this space.
And for people who are still sort of getting up to speed with this, I mean, we know that 5G, the last iteration, was built on the Internet of Things, and you mentioned 6G will also include things like AI. So in reality, for people watching this sort of convergence between the human, the physical, what we're seeing with 6G's potential here, what are some of the advances as well as the risks that come with it?
To your point, I'll make it real. When we think about COVID, we often think about the opportunities for different families around America. So you had kids who couldn't access their school remotely. You had people who couldn't work from home effectively because they didn't have fast, effective internet access. So to your point on opportunities, we're seeing examples where in the mountains of South America, where in the past, folks had to carry cement on the backs of mules to build cell towers at the tops of mountains in rural areas. Today, because of more using data and using AI, we can build more power-efficient sensors and have been able to bring access to those remote areas. Similarly, from a policy perspective, back in 2020, the FCC assessed there were 600,000 tribal households that didn't have broadband. And through some spectrum policy innovations, there's now programs rolling out internet access to 15,000 tribal households in Oklahoma, North and South Dakota. So those kinds of tech innovations will move to be far broader in 6G. Now, to your point, where are the risks? So on the national security side, you talked about US or China's leadership in this space. We certainly see much tighter linkage now between the Chinese government, not only state-owned firms, but their private sector telecom firms like Huawei and ZTE. And in fact, we believe over 90% of private sector Chinese firms now have Communist Party cadres in those firms who can influence the decision making. When you think about telecom, there's millions of lines of code in the software, in the hardware. And when there's that much code, if you can't trust your supplier, you can't have confidence that data won't be spied on, that communications won't be disrupted or degraded in a time of crisis. So ensuring that we get the security right in 6G is absolutely essential.
And how difficult will it be, though, for Washington to really sort of dictate some of these standards when you do have different countries developing their own standards when it comes to 6G?
Great question. So, we invited a number of like-minded allies and partners to come to the event, and we're planning a ministerial in the next couple of months, really bringing together other key countries who share our goals from an economic perspective, from a national security perspective. A number of the key telecom players today are European companies, and our goal is to work together to discuss how do we ensure the standards enable open, resilient, secure, and diverse telecommunications, both the technologies around 6G.
And then when it comes to China and, say, Russia and sort of expanded cybersecurity there, then what does that mean for sort of trying to compete with those standards as well as sort of tracking the developments in cybersecurity that really some of these companies in the US also need? We know that last month the Biden administration rolled out some of these minimum mandates when it comes to cybersecurity, whereas before, companies could do this on a more voluntary basis.
As you talked about, technology is spread across our entire economies. It's a part of our lives. So from a Biden administration perspective, the president has really made it a priority to improve the resilience of critical infrastructure so Americans can have confidence in their water systems, their power systems. And I think what we've acknowledged is that after the last 10 years of public-private partnership, which has made progress, our adversaries are making far more progress in compromising technology than we've made in voluntary efforts in building more secure tech. So the goal of the Biden administration's work over the last 2 years has been to put in place these minimum cybersecurity practices. They're the kind of best practices we've been talking about for many years. Multi-factor authentication, patching systems rapidly, and to say if you're an operator of critical infrastructure in the US, if you're operating a water system, if you're operating an oil and gas pipeline, we need you to put in place those minimum cybersecurity practices because we saw in the May 2021 incident with Colonial Pipeline the impact that a cyber attack, and in that case it was a criminal, wasn't even a nation-state actor, but the impact that vulnerabilities in core critical infrastructure can have on Americans' lives. And that's the reason the Biden administration has made that switch to say we need to ensure that those critical infrastructure services are as resilient as they need to be to meet the threat.
We do appreciate you joining us with your insights this morning. Anne Neuberger, Deputy National Security Advisor for Cyber Emerging Technology. Thank you so much.